Hey Hustlers! On today's episode of the Hustler podcast, I am joined by Dan Chan, billionaire's magician. So it's going to be a fun episode because Dan is a magician that has worked with some of the biggest companies in the world. And it's going to be a long one, so make sure you stay until the end because there's a lot that Dan has to share in this episode. You know, he's a great marketer, great entrepreneur, and also, of course, a great magician. So let's start with his client list. I'm looking at his website right now, and his client list is just massive. So I'm just going to name some of these clients to give you an idea about the clients that he's worked with. Okay, they include people like 7-Eleven, Airbnb, Apple, Facebook, EA Games, even Google, Intel, IBM, NASA, Netflix, PayPal, Stanford, Sony, Viv, and many more, to be honest. So that was a mouthful. I'm not gonna go. There's a lot more clients that I did not mention because the list is just too long. So I want to start off with some quick facts about Dan, okay? He has performed over 5,000 shows since 1999. So he's been at the business for about 20 years already. And BuzzFeed named him Silicon Valley's favorite magician and did an exclusive feature profile on him and him alone. So his career really took off after that feature piece, and he's gone semi-viral with a video that, you know, BuzzFeed has put together, and it got him 14,000 views in a matter of just 3 days. And that video, you know, now has about 25,000 views. So let's help Dan push that to 25,000 views, okay, guys? So I'm sure that you'll enjoy the technological marvels that you'll see. It's not your typical magic, like card tricks and all that. He uses iPhones to do his magic tricks and stuff like that. So guys, you want to stick around and listen to the entire episode because there are some real marketing, branding, and business strategy takeaways that you'll definitely find valuable. So stay tuned. Hey Dan, pleasure to have you on the show today. Say hello, Dan.
Hi, how are you? Thanks for having me on your show, Jeremy.
It's my pleasure. So let's start by telling us a little bit more about yourself and, you know, what you do for a living.
Yeah, I have a pretty fun and exciting life as a magician. I crash parties for a living. I've done parties for all of the Silicon Valley elite, including founders of Google, Twitter founders, so even George Lucas, John Madden, and even Draymond Green.
Wow. So tell me more about, you know, your client list, because I recognize almost every single name on the client list that you've provided, and except for Bomac and Viv. Can you tell me a little bit more about these clients?
Yeah, a BOMAG is a construction company, and they are an international company that's owned by the Fiat company. They have flown me out to Germany, Shanghai, Las Vegas. In fact, they're flying me to Las Vegas again in March of next year. And Viv is a company that is founded by one of the co-founders of Siri, and they are now a company that's acquired by Samsung. So
Wow.
the founder is a good friend of mine and was also on Penn and Teller's Fool Us.
Wow. So I'm just a little bit curious about this, but isn't it a little bit arrogant or, like, you know, stuck up to be calling yourself the billionaire's magician? Like, you know, Dan asked me to ask this specifically, so I'm just gonna do it and be super candid about it. So I'm sure there's a story behind things, right? And hopefully we can learn something about this.
Yeah, I think it's all about market positioning. I first started off as Dan Chan Magic Man, which was really cool in the beginning because Dan Chan rhymes. Magic Man is an alliteration. Rhymes and alliteration are actually pretty hypnotic in marketing. I'd had people, like competitors, say to me, they came to the show with their daughter and they said, "My daughter sung your name on the drive home, all the way home, like the half an hour." And he said, "I could have bitch slapped you." He said that to me, and I'm like, I took that as an ultimate compliment because their daughter loved what I did, and they couldn't stop singing that, and that's happened. But that works on the lower end. Then I transitioned and pivoted to Dan Chan Master Magician. And you also have to be able to pull that off in terms of the way that you speak, because when we're a lot younger, I was a lot more rushed. But when I was older, I had this experience. I had the confidence to know that I can execute as a master magician. But lately, I've been performing for quite a few billionaires, Twitter founders, Google founders, and a lot of other companies, unknown names, people that are billionaires in the Bay Area, people who are from China. And it's just, when I'm the billionaire's magician, it cultivates this image that people will drive to me for my dinner shows. Before I'm going out, they just want to hire a master magician, but now I'm quoting pretty much quite high that I'm turning down a majority of my events. So how do I utilize that amount of time? Like Monday through Wednesdays are typically days that people don't throw parties, but I still have that time. So there's some opportunity cost there. And by positioning myself and by quoting very high for the rest of my days, people are actually coming to me as a destination, because right now I'm trying to create what I've seen other people do. There's a guy by the name of Steve Cohen, and he's a wonderful magician. He goes by the Millionaire's Magician. And a lot of people had a little bit of a beef with me claiming, hey, are you as good? I mean, we're all individuals, and it's great to make a bold claim if you can back it up. And I have performed for the Allen and Company gathering of media moguls and billionaires. And it's a gathering where the CEO of Nike comes, and Warren Buffett and Bill Gates and a lot of other influencers. You can look that up. It's Allen and Company. I did it many years ago, over 10 years ago. And that's kind of when I started thinking, hey, I'm going to label myself. I've performed for a handful of billionaires. And once that started, I started performing for a lot more billionaires.
Wow, that's like super interesting story right there. So have you always been a magician? So what were you doing before you got started? How did you get into performing magic?
Yeah, I've had a lot of fun jobs. I'm not going to talk about too many of them. But there's always little seeds, and looking back, hindsight, it's interesting to see how my career has progressed. I probably known as much magic as the other person, but getting into it was lectures and books and DVDs. As you can see behind me, I have a lot of magic books and DVDs. These are all, tools of the trade, and I made that investment. I made some crazy investments. My mom would be like, hey, why are you spending all this on why are you continuing to buy books? But because I want to be the best of the best. So there's the main pivot point was me going into a magic shop, Misdirections Magic Shop by Joe Pond in San Francisco on 9th and Irving. I was just like a kid in the candy store, and I ended up going to a live lecture. And by learning from people live, you kind of see a lot more.
Right. So that was the turning point, like seeing the behind the scenes stuff.
Knowing that I could do it, and knowing that someone would mentor me and get me through some of the hurdles, that was the biggest turning point. But there was always little interest. For example, I was a ski instructor at Snow Summit. And one day they had at least 7 or 8 Playboy bunnies for that year. And they had a magician. And I ended up following the magician around. A good thing I didn't follow the bunnies around, because I probably wouldn't make a very good Playboy bunny. And I probably wouldn't have met my wife.
Right.
So it's really cool that you can crash parties for a living. But that started with me kind of like being a little bit secretive and following that magician around. And he kind of, I'm sure he didn't want to see me, but I was smart enough to watch him from behind. And I just would watch him and watch all the sets and kind of figure things out, because we all intuitively like to figure things out.
Right. So when was the turning point? When did you know that, magic was the thing for you?
There's a story about burning off the bridges, or when people invade, they burn the boats behind them. For me, that boat was PayPal. I worked at PayPal pre-IPO in the .com era in the peak. I had a lot of stock options. Yet with the stock options, I exercised 13 months of stock options. And stock options are very valuable. And I gave up the rest of my stock options just so that I would be happy, because I didn't realize that money wasn't everything. I wanted to do what made me happy and what made me passionate. Even though right now I'm having a great time doing these corporate events. I just worked for Netflix this week. I've worked for a lot of other companies. I'm doing TechCrunch Disrupt. And I've been doing that for many years. But I realized that would I still be really, truly happy if I continue to do corporate events? Because on Instagram, it looks great. I'm doing these really over-the-top parties. You can see so much cool stuff on my Instagram feed. But it's going to get old soon. And I want to give people a different experience. So I'm always evolving. I'm pushing the limits. I don't want to get comfortable.
Right. So speaking of Instagram, I saw that video on your Facebook page about this super epic party with a whole lot of animals, including a huge tiger case. So why don't you tell us a little bit more about that party?
Yeah, I did this party, and they had a whole zoo, almost everything from A to Z. I think there was an alligator or crocodile there on a table, not caged up and not on a leash. There was leopards and eagles and even a tiger in a woodside home. They brought a huge cage, and you can take a look at the picture of that huge tiger, and imagine going to parties with tigers behind you. That's pretty epic. Yeah.
Right. So you also mentioned that you have a story about how you got out of a speeding ticket. Why don't you elaborate a little bit more about that?
Yeah. I got pulled over by a police officer. I believe I was coming from Lodi, California. And the officer said, he saw me dressed up and he asked, "Oh, are you going to a wedding?" And I said, "No, I am a magician." So of course he said, "Show me a magic trick." And he said, show me a good magic trick, I'll let you go." So I ended up showing him five $1 bills, and I changed those $1 bills into $100 bills. And I even let him see them. Of course, I didn't let him keep them, but he let me go. And that's a trick that can help you save hundreds of dollars, and you don't even have to switch to Geico.
Wow, must be nice being a magician. You can get away with almost anything, right?
No, it doesn't always work, to be honest with you. That's because he asked me. I've tried getting out of other things, like similar things, and I didn't get out of it. So it's not always you don't always get away with everything.
Right.
But I have gotten free ice cream on airplanes, and I do a lot of things for the stewardesses, and I get a lot of upgrades. So people walk up to me. I actually physically just go up. I know that their job is tough, and I don't expect anything out of it. Sometimes if you get something out of it, it's all good, but I want to make people smile. I first started performing magic on the streets, and it was not for the tips, but I knew what I had was so compelling that it was worth giving to people, regardless if I got paid for it.
Right. So you mentioned that right now you're mainly doing a lot of corporate events. You're doing a corporate event for Netflix. Can you give me an idea how epic are these parties and events that these billionaires host? What kind of budgets do they have?
Well, sometimes it's smaller, but sometimes, if they've already cashed out and they're already donating $1 billion for a hospital or things like that, they don't really care about money anymore. So money's no object. I've done kids' birthday parties where they've spent $250,000 for their kid's birthday party with ice bars and crazy things, with flying actors and teams of dancers from LA. And, there's parties where it's $100 or $300 bottles of wines. And that's like the minimum. I was talking to the bartender, and they're like, "Oh, each of these bottles are $300. I'm like, okay. I think I should be charging a little bit more, but it's just great to be a part of this almost fantasy world.
Right. That sounds like really crazy. What about the holiday parties that you mentioned, to me?
Yeah, holiday parties, they have Sometimes I've done parties where they have three different magicians. They have jugglers, they'll have stilt walkers, and they'll have it catered by some of the most well-known names. I've done a party where it was catered by um, one of Thomas Keller's restaurants for a wedding. So that was pretty epic. I've done a lot of winery events. So you get to travel to different places like wineries and places that you don't know it exists. I would not know that there's so many golf courses in the Bay Area.
Right. Okay. So you mentioned that you started your journey in 1999, right? So it's been almost 20 years. So how has your business changed? How have you pivoted, or how has your, you know, act evolved in terms of your business, the gig, and stuff like that?
Yeah, in the beginning, it's family entertainment. You're low on the value chain. I was doing magic and balloons and juggling and pickpocketing, and I still do some pickpocketing, but it was more like a variety entertainment because you're doing these parties where you have to play really big, and young kids have short attention spans. But as I started doing libraries and schools, I played my act bigger. So I would stuff myself or my son into a 6 foot tall by 6 foot wide balloon because that's very visual. It's not like an illusion. So I would do all these things to make myself play bigger. And that's the thing that people ask, oh, are you a magician? I'm not really a magician. I'm an entertainment specialist. But on the higher end, I'm a connector. I connect people at parties. People want a high-end event, they have me kind of connect them. It's not all about me. And a lot of magicians don't realize that I just make them smile, and I capture that on either camera. When I tell the photographer, I meet with the photographer before I even start, and I show them the tricks, and I tell them when people's faces will light up. And when I do that, I'm more like an entertainment consultant.
Wow. Okay. So tell me more about some of your marketing tactics. How did you brand yourself? Where did you learn all these things? Like positioning yourself, lower end on the value chain to middle end and then to high ticket.
Yeah, every time I'm sold something, I study it. I'm on Quora. I continue to write, but I also study all my competition and I ask myself, what are they doing and how can I differentiate? I definitely don't want to copy anyone local because I don't want to be the same as them. But I look at internationally, what am I competing against? And I don't think about me just competing against other magicians. I think you can go to Broadway shows or off-Broadway shows or similar types of events. You can go to Cirque du Soleil. So when I see everyone going in one direction, I go in the opposite direction. And that's what I'm doing at the Bay Area Dinner Show, which is bayareadinnershow.com, is everyone's going for Copperfield, making large illusions. For me, I like doing close-up magic. So with this show, I'm looking at every single person's face in the audience. And I ask them, what's the last magic show you've ever seen before? They tell me, and then I take a short break and I customize the show for them. And I have about 4.5 hours worth of material with me. So I do a show based on everyone else they've seen before, and I try to make it very different so that they have a different feeling. Because most of the times, you don't know what a person has seen before, whether they've seen Copperfield or which local magicians. If they're like what I call magic virgins, we'll do magic for them that is a little bit more classic, like the linking rings and sponge balls. And I'll quickly move past it to do my signature iPhone tricks. And I'll have someone name a card, and I'll pull that card out of my Instagram, out of their phone on my Instagram feed. And they'll hand back the phone to them. So there's different things that I do that I know no one else is doing in my area. And once I'm doing those effects, it makes me stand out. And my act is always evolving. So much so that I want to be like Thomas Keller. He's one of my heroes. He owns the French Laundry, which is a Michelin-rated, a 3 Michelin-rated star restaurant in the Bay Area. And I want to be such a big thing that they're coming to see me. And I want to find investors and the right chef so that we can build this destination where it's a magic and dining experience fully integrated. We used to run as a pop-up from 2013 to last year of December, which was in 2018 at Dynasty Cupertino. It was the largest Asian restaurant. And we could seat 300 in the front, 600 in the back, and we had 10 VIP dining rooms, which is, for Asia standards, that's like pretty common, like in Hong Kong and China, these VIP rooms. But in America, there's nothing like that. So if for any of your followers in Asia, if anyone wants to start something, I would love to talk to investors to bring in another restaurant like that, because there's no competition in the venue banquet. And one thing that they did was they priced themselves accordingly because there was no competition. And you want to go into places that have no competition. Talking about like, where do you compete? When I competed, I pole vaulted and I swam. But when I pole vaulted, there was only 2 people. The other guy like pole vaulted an insane 12 or 13 feet. I pole vaulted like 2 feet higher than people high jump. Pathetic, pretty much. I'm not afraid to say that, but you need your foot in the door. And I wasn't embarrassed. I scored points for the team. The team had to carry the stuff out. But in the end, some people would be like in this huge field of competition where there's like 2 rounds of running and there's like 14 competitors or more. And those people all don't score points because it's first, second, or third. So keep in mind, in any business, you have to be top 3 to even be considered. Otherwise, for people in my industry, for example, they say, oh, I'm a magician, but they're only working Christmas and Halloween. They're only working some part of the time. You got to find out what you are doing so that you're number 1, 2, or 3, so you can get your foot in the door, so you're constantly working. Then from there, you have negotiation power. You can always pivot. Like, for example, for your takeaways for the guys that are listening to your podcast for hustling, I had this problem of a guy hiring me. And he sent me this email saying, hey, I'm going to hire you. I Googled his name. So it's always good to, first of all, Google who you're working with. I'm not going to mention this guy's name because he's friends with me on Facebook now. Okay. But he hired me. He said, hey, can you show up to an event in Mountain View? One day prior, he changes it to Woodside. But I kind of knew that this was going to happen anyways, because when you Google his name, it mentions these epic parties and him throwing like parties at this $45 million estate. And am I bitter that he changed it from one place to another? I knew that he was a little bit sneaky, but I learned from that one experience. So now I have this thing where I have a little bit more negotiation power, where I run a standby rate during the busy season, especially. I say, if you can't afford my regular rate, I'll give you a lower rate, maybe half the price. But if someone wants to hire me and pays my full rate, I'm able to take that if I fill that in. It's still money back guarantee, and sometimes I'll have to pay the difference. But if like a billionaire hires me and I want to charge $2,500 or $5,000, I can pass out my $500 or $1,000 event. And that's what we call leverage in business. So you have to figure out different ways. But if I did not have the brand and the trust, and I have 150 plus Yelp reviews, and I take those reviews seriously, I can't just send them Joe Schmo and them doing a really bad job. I have to protect my brand. So if I'm paid $500 or $1,000, and another magician, if I get a $5,000 event, I'm going to have to cover that event. And sometimes I might have to pay out of my own pocket, whether it's $500 more or even $1,000 more. But that still gives me leverage, and I don't have one day empty. You know, the thing is, you can always be wasting time, and a lot of people don't get their foot in the door. So entertainment, for me, that was like the pivotal thing, because I've never heard of anyone doing this cool strategy. I was the first one that came up with it, I believe, because I remember the moments that it happened. And it's a pivotal point when I kind of got screwed over by this business person. And I've been to other events where they say, hey, I'm on a budget, but you show up and then you're seeing Mercedes-Benz or Lamborghinis in there. And you're like, were you really on the budget? They're like, oh, I'm financing the car, or I'm doing some other excuse. I'm like, yeah, you say you're on a budget, but you could have paid me more. It's where your priorities are. So walk away power is a big thing. So right now, I love valuing my time, and I do less and less events. But when I do it, I add a lot through the value chain by either consulting or being a trusted advisor. It's great that I can say, hey, I'm the billionaire's magician, but connecting with people allows me to not just be the hero, but be the guide. And I was hearing some podcasts, and you might hear that often, is people don't care if you're the hero, be the guide. So I'm making more successful people. I'm building up my team and also sharing a lot of the IP that in the past I wasn't willing to share.
Right. Tons of value bombs right there, guys. Like super, super powerful stuff that Dan has just shared with us. So Dan, a little bit of a personal question for you. I know earlier on you mentioned that you stuffed your son into a balloon for a show before. So I see you've done juggling, fire juggling, and even your wife, son, and daughter performs with you on the job, right? How is it like working with your family?
Yeah, it can be challenging at times, but it's always better to accept those challenges. Like we're homeschooling our kids this 1 year for the first year. My son is 11, my daughter is 10. And there's tension, but you have to have a little bit of structure. And as an entrepreneur, you have to kind of go with the flow. Like if something's happening, some parties were up until 11 or 12 midnight. One party, I one day Halloween many years ago, I did 6 shows in one day. I started at 10 a.m. My last show started at midnight at a club, and I was fire juggling.
Wow.
So I have my wife drive with me. We all take a role in making this as a team effort. My son now takes over all the kids events pretty much. He's 11 years old. He does kid shows. He's charging between 100 to sometimes if it's a corporate event, where last year I had to pull him out of school or the year before for a big name company. I can't even name these companies because we're under non-disclosures in some instances. A big company hired my son for $750. I said, hey, my wife won't let me pull him out, but if you want this, and when they've seen it before, it's not just quoting a high price. These companies are putting their names on the museum walls. They're sponsoring the zoos. So I mentioned to them, it's hard being an entertainer. I make them empathize with me because I started off on the streets. I tell them a couple of stories that are heartfelt, and they want to pretty much like sponsor us to be there because they're like, there's competition, but I have to give them a reason. And they don't know that I actually have my son take lessons from one of the world's best jugglers. They don't care that my lessons cost $100 an hour. But in the beginning, even when I said I'm the best, and I truly believe in the niche that I'm hiring, I'm delivering the best. So I'm telling them I'm going to lectures. If I get them on the phone a little bit longer, I can give them a reason why they're spending more or what differentiates me. And these are things I don't put on my website because I don't want people to copy my secret formula. It's important that you don't put all of it out there. I put it close so that way I can create a little bit of an ecosystem, and I can teach the guys that work with me. Like if I can't do an event, I just have this hidden army of guys behind me that can do the events for me.
I see. So it seems like, you and your family work all sorts of events, right? So what are the majority of the events that you guys do now?
My wife does a lot of balloon twisting for companies like the Oakland Athletics. They hired her. That's a baseball team. Mm-hmm. She's done the SF Giants recently. My son did the 49ers and the Warriors. Those are the more high-profile names, but they're still doing a lot of family. For me, it's mainly 90% corporate events, and I'm trying to get my dinner show taking off. So with the dinner show, it's an investment in time and building a brand. And it's starting from, I'm making a lot less money, and I'm putting a lot more effort, but people are starting to come to me. So it's a different formula that I'm figuring out. And it's just giving building up traction and figuring out how to pivot. So I tell people, the potential investors, I'm still looking at some investors. I'm doing stuff that no one's doing, and I tell them that, and no one will want to do it because it's so hard. When I tell them my story of what I'm doing, they're like, wow, that's crazy. No one's going to want to do that. No one's going to want to search every single magic book. No one's going to want to do this. And no one's going to give up their IP because for me, magicians say, oh, don't give away the secret.
Yep.
I'm actually ready to give away my secrets or a large portion of my best tricks so that I can formalize it and codify it in a system so that I do not have to be there and I can be replaceable. Because as an investor, they do not want to invest in me. What if I get hit by a truck, or what if anything happens to me? You want people to pass on the legacy. So I've been teaching different people different sets of what I'm doing, and eventually I'll teach them pretty much everything of what I do, or at least my philosophy, so that they can replicate it, copy me for a certain amount of time, and then look at other inspiration so that they can make it their own. And the most important thing is we all have different worldviews, and everything that I've started to do was based on me having an interest in tech. And I fit into that environment. So I'm not just a magician. At the end of the party, I blend in and I can talk their talk. There's other magicians that are very, very talented, but they don't understand the tech world. They can't talk to VC. They don't understand what a Series A and Series B and what a term sheet is. Like when I have a card signed, I'll say, go ahead and sign your card just like you're about to sign the next term sheet. It's such a small distinction to say that, but they laugh because they know I understand their world. And it's the same trick every magician does, but I add that customization and it really feels very personal.
I see. So I guess that's what makes you different from the regular magicians that we see on, say, on the TV shows or at or on the streets, because you used to work at PayPal, right? So you know how the startup ecosystem works, because I mean you're based in Silicon Valley, right? So other than that, what makes you different from the guys that we see on, say, America's Got Talent and Penn and Teller's Fool Us TV show, like Shin Lim, for example?
I hack into people's iPhone. I do a lot of things with their iPhone. I do things with my iPhone. I do something where I use an ordinary deck of playing cards, and I put a deck of cards in their hand, and I take a picture with it. And it's with their smartphone. People think it's Photoshop, but it's not, and it's just the real picture. But there's layers of magic that's happening at the same time. So incorporating what I'm surrounded with makes it different. And not a lot of people are doing iPhone magic or hacking into iPhones, but based in Silicon Valley and the technology companies I work with, that's one of the differentiators. But I have many more differentiators I'm not even going to put out here because that's my secret, so that it's creating a little bit of buzz and sexiness. So when you come see me in San Francisco, when you're making your international travels, you're gonna come out as a destination. You're gonna see certain illusions that you will not see anywhere else.
Okay.
And that,
right.
if I give that away, there's gonna be no reason for someone to show up. I don't even videotape that. Everything that I videotape is pretty much old generation stuff. I might do them occasionally, but those are things that are well out there and close to retired, I would say.
I see. So I just checked out your website. You know, you have a really beautiful website, and I see a lot of, just huge names in terms of their brands and all those kind of stuff. How do you first get started? Like, how do you get at such an impressive client list?
I check them off systematically. I literally target my customers, and when Facebook advertising started, like I tell you, I know the Silicon Valley industry. I spent $15,000 on Facebook ads and $15,000 on Google AdWords since the beginning. That's not a lot for what I'm doing. It's just a percentage of what I'm earning. But I can target you by where you work. I can target you by zip code. I can target you by the amount of money you earn. And that's what you want to do when you're high up on the value chain. If you're low on the value chain, you can't do that because you're not making enough money. But if you're making enough, you can reinvest and you can target. Once you're charging enough, I targeted every single company. I would sometimes email people on LinkedIn. I have a LinkedIn recruiter profile, which I pay $100 a month for. And I literally send them soft pitches. I'll say, hey, sir, I noticed, and I've done ridiculous things. We might have to share it in a different podcast because we don't have enough time to talk about the strategies that I'm using online. But LinkedIn is a very powerful strategy that you can use just by emailing reporters, getting a lot more buzz. But what really made my career take off was the BuzzFeed article. I had a reporter come and I talked about Silicon Valley holiday parties. At first, that was the article they're going to write about. I said, are you interested? Because I don't want to put the focus on me first. Because they're like, who cares? But I made it so good when he saw me at a party that he said, hey, I want you to, I want the focus of the article to be about you. I didn't say that. I said, can you do something about Silicon Valley parties? Why don't you come with me to, several of these parties, tag along, see what you think. And he was my sound guy, and I introduced him as my sound guy, and I taught him like beforehand what to run my sound. So I killed two birds with one stone. My wife didn't have to come with me. I had a reporter come, and he wrote this epic article. It got 14,000 views in 3 days, kind of short of viral, but it really, the right eyes looking at it really made a difference. It has 24,500 plus views. So if you search Silicon Valley's favorite magician on BuzzFeed, you're going to see that video. And that's the turning point where I pretty much started turning away kids' parties. I rarely do a kids' party. The last kids' party I did was for a Google 11th employee. And he cashed out. He now works at Twitter. I did 2 other Twitter employees, founders. I won't mention their names, but it was pretty epic. One in Mill Valley area in Sausalito, and then one in, I think, Portola Valley or Atherton.
Right. So it sounds like you attend like a hell of a lot of, epic parties. Can you, off the top of your head, which one is the most like memorable one? I'm sure there's an amazing story over there.
Yeah. I'll list a couple. Timothy Ferriss hired me 4 times. At one of the parties, he had Josh Wozniak, the guy that was the subject of searching for Bobby Fischer. And I remember him getting fooled completely. Like they're trying to reverse engineer everything, and they're just like buzzed, and they're like super excited. That was a pretty epic party to see Paul Abdul and see all these pretty famous people, because his parties weren't boring. His parties were cool. One was held on a World War II ship. The other one was for one of the founders of Google, who hired us 10 times. The last 2 parties, he had tigers and the whole circus and zoo there. John Madden had me at his kid's birthday party, and I didn't even know that was him. Like, I thought he was a football guy, not an announcer, and I don't follow sports. So when I show up to these parties, I'm kind of oblivious, So I asked the lady, hey, I noticed your last name's Madden. And by any chance, you related to John Madden? And the lady's like, oh, and this is after my show. So she's like, oh, he's been sitting right there. He's in front of you the entire time. I'm like, oh, that's John Madden. I didn't know that. So that was pretty epic to be in that, presence of someone great and not even know it. And right. I'll give you 1 or 2 more. That was kind of interesting. Yeah. The one for me that hits home the most is seeing my kids being really joyful. We got hired for Draymond Green's son's first birthday party, his kid. But I got to take my wife and my daughter and my son all to that party. And to me, that's more epic, being able to spend time with my family and pass this on to my son, who's already juggling 3 torches, 5 balls, and pickpocketing. That's like a competitive advantage that most magicians don't have. They might be skilled at stuff, but they can't pick pockets. So for me, that's epic to be able to take my family along.
Right. It sounds like, you have a very close-knitted family. I mean, they're all Except your daughter, right? Like, are they all involved in your business?
Yeah, my daughter, she does a lot of proofreading. She runs my sound when my wife's not there. She can solve a Rubik's Cube. I'm really proud of her. She can do it in like 2 minutes. So there's one trick where at the end of the trick, I need her to solve the Rubik's Cube. And I have her solve it. And eventually I'm going to have her solve it on stage too, in front of larger audiences. But right now she's doing it in a close-up setting.
I see. So she's
And she
like
does
the.
memories. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
She also does math and memory stunts. It's James the Juggler and Amazing Grace, because I love, my mother as a pastor and my grandfather was a pastor. So I love the song Amazing Grace. So I was like, Grace, Amazing Grace. That's kind of like a little bit catchy on stage. So
I
that's why we
see.
named her Amazing Grace, because I knew it was going to be a showbiz family.
I see. So I saw on your Instagram as well that your son now juggles like balls and flaming torches and stuff. How the hell did you get him to learn that?
Oh, that's a really interesting story. I first started teaching like living social vouchers. I sold these living social vouchers, which is now acquired by Groupon, right? But I taught 50 plus people how to juggle because I didn't want him to be the first one. I wanted to learn teaching progressions. So what I specialize is in teaching progressions. I planned it way out. When he was 4 years old, we started training. From 4 to 5, we would sometimes argue because his hands aren't even big enough to hold juggling balls, right?
Right. Yeah.
Like his hands were so small, you could see this thing. I would just have my friends, we'd come up with ideas and I'd say, oh, throw the ball to me. I would throw the ball to you. He'd catch him with both hands. And we started like that. But when we started 3 balls, it was frustrating because he would cry and I would cry because I knew I was forcing him to do something, but then we stopped. And we didn't give up. And that was really, really challenging. No one's ever going to do that, I think, to get their kids to juggle at that young age, because that was crazy. At the age of 5, we never argued again. And that story behind that is pretty epic. My wife gets hired by the San Francisco SPCA to twist balloons out on the street, but giving them out for free. She's paid, but the SPCA wants to give them for free. So I tell my son to go out on the street in this courtyard area, and I say, go do your 15 minutes. When you're done, we'll go out and I'm going to treat you to something, because he has to do 15 minutes a day. I know he's going to get tipped. I'm almost positive, because I street performed when I was younger. People will start walking up to this 5-year-old and they start tipping him. He's like, hey, Dad, these guys are giving me money. I'm like, yeah, you're doing a great job. You're making people happy. They think you're cute. And I said, if you want to juggle more, you can juggle more. Otherwise, we can go out. But I think you're making a bit of money. Do you want to juggle more, or do you want to go leave? He says, I'm going to juggle more, Dad. He takes very few breaks. He's there for 2 hours plus on his own accord. I'm not forcing him to do anything. And he makes $120 US dollars plus, 120 plus US dollars street performing at age 5.
A day?
No, $120 for 2 hours of work.
Wow. Okay. Does he still do that though? Like, did that go on for like, quite some time, or was that like a one-time off thing?
He does that in Palo Alto. We do that. There's a lot of VC people walking around. If you want to see us, sometimes when we're trying new stuff, we're at Salt and Straw in Palo Alto. We're in front of them. And Salt and Straw, if anyone's from Salt and Straw or any other ice cream company, I would love to open up an ice cream company and have a theater behind the ice cream company and teach your staff how to do magic. So that's just not the ice cream isn't just a draw, so that when it's a little bit slower, your staff can show the guests how to do magic. But I'm going to go back. Whenever we're doing larger events, we have to be really polished. If they're paying us $1,000 an hour for an event, or even 500 or whatever, you cannot mess up. There's a level of professionalism we deliver. So if I'm trying something new, I'm going to go out on the streets to try it. I might do it just for one person, or I might even stay an hour out on the street if I'm enjoying that trip. But I'm so passionate about it, I would do this regardless if I got paid for it. And I love what I do so much that I'm glad that people would pay me for it. So it's just such a cool thing that being able to get yourself in front of the audience.
Mm-hmm. Right. So one more thing about your son. You sent me an email earlier, saying that, your son is going to be on a major TV show as well. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, he should be. We filmed this thing. Kids say the darndest things.
Uh-huh.
So, we filmed it. He's going to be on that in fall, in October, doing a large major illusion. And I'm really proud of him because I've never been on national television. But he's going to be on national television. Hopefully, I used to look at things in the beginning. You have to have a lot of goals. But when I first started off as an entrepreneur, and I think a lot of people do this, is, this is my analogy, and I came up with this, but grab a lot of darts, you throw it at the wall, and you draw circles around where the dart lands. Because retrofitting or figuring out, you know that something's going to have to stick, but you don't know where it's going to stick. But say that's your goal, or you're going to try something, and you have to throw darts around the wall and see where you hit, and just put your arm out there and continue to do it and draw the circles around it. Your target saying, hey, that's where I wanted to hit. In the beginning, I was like, I wasn't that great, but I would do libraries and schools. And a lot of people ask, how can I become a corporate magician? I love what you're doing. I'm like, do kid shows first. People think there's a secret formula. There's a lot of young guys asking me, oh, I want to be like you, Dan. I want to be like you. I'm like, go do 2,500 kid shows, or at least do 100 kid shows with me. See what you think, and then we'll talk about, working together. But if you can't do a kid show, you know why kid shows are cool? Kids have no filter. A grown-up might think, hey, I know how that works. But their tongue, they're not going to say anything because out of respect, they're not going to tell you what they truly think, because they're going to think in the back of your head, that was only okay. A kid's going to tell you, and their whole body language is going to show it to you. Adults just sit like this. Sometimes if you're super good, like I can read it now, I know what elicits that reaction. I can make that one person who's like this freaking lower their arms and be like, the reaction. There's a lot of people, you can read their body language. It's really easy. And I think it's where the culture comes from, especially older generations, Chinese. They're like this, because when you're doing a magic trick, they think you're scamming them. It's not a scam, but they want to know how it works, but they're also saying, hey, I know how that works. We're, as Asians, especially from a lower socioeconomic background, and that's where I came from, a lower, middle class. I would consider myself middle class. My parents grew me up in a middle class family, but it's about soft skills. But soft skills is about reading people. And quite often, people don't know how to read other people in terms of the pacing of a conversation. And I actually do that as a coaching thing now for coaching clients. And I don't make a lot of money off of it, to be honest with you, but I'm doing this because I love teaching people in other industries about the little skills that take bringing a ordinary product into a luxury product, because that's what I'm positioning myself. If you look at danchanmagic.com, you can see that it's a position as a very high-end luxury product. And negotiating with so many different people, I have the skill that no one else has. And I felt that teaching those listening skills and soft skills was something that would even heighten my game, because I know if you can't teach it, you truly don't understand it.
Right.
Yeah, and you notice that I kind of segue a lot of times. Mm-hmm. I learned that from a couple of different mentors on how to answer the question and redirect that into where you want to go to position yourself to tell the story that you want. And being in front of a lot of crowds and doing it so often, I've become a little bit of a master at being able to tell your story and use that question that people answer, that commonality. We're all asking a lot of the same questions. How can we make more money? How can we save time? There's a lot of common questions that we have. And if you can solve those people's problems, Business is about solving problems. If you can solve those problems, you can make a lot of money. The harder the problem, the more money you can make. And I literally am not just a magician. I am being that lubricant in that social interaction. When two people are meeting, imagine if you went to a party and there was no music or no magician making anyone laugh. When you make people smile or laugh, they want to buy from you. When you make them relaxed and comfortable, the more willing and receptive. And because I understand that so intimately as a subtext of what I'm doing, and I can convey that, clients understand that. Like when I'm doing a trade show, I'm not a trade show magician. I used to gather massive crowds. People flew me to Orlando to do their trade shows. But when I'm doing a trade show, I ask my trade show client, if you were to seal a deal, if your most important customer were to pass by, who would that customer look like? Do you want to work with Google? Do you want to work with Yahoo or Facebook? And I tell them and that's the reason why I can charge what I charge for a trade show, is because I know what their end goal is, so then I know what to shoot for. I'm not grabbing those darts and throwing them against a wall and drawing a circle around it. I'm telling them where do we want to focus? So I've seen people walk through and I see their badge is the ideal client. And I say, I do such a great job with the magic that they stay in the booth for 15, 20 minutes. I just keep them in the booth. I tell them, don't sell them anything. I'm your brand ambassador, brand representative. When they're done, it's weird. It's almost surreal. They're standing in the trade show booth and they're looking around. They don't even know what they're doing. It's like they've been hypnotized. And they're like, oh, what does the company do? But they spent so much time here. And in the beginning, I said, hey, say the magic words. Pitney Bowes. Say the magic words. Falcon Store. These are companies that I work for. They said it a couple times, and now they've had such a great interaction. Of course, the product has to work, and they have to execute on it. But the more time they spend with you, the more they get to know you, the more they're willing to buy into you. And that's why I am retelling my story on your podcast. I think about where I want to go, what the reach is, and I think about the multiplier effect, because I realize that there's so many billionaires in Asia, and you have tapped into a large percentage. Some guy listening to your podcast might be the son or daughter of a billionaire. And for them, their parents want them to partner with someone and work with someone who's been there and done that, and they want to do something fun. So I realized, where do billionaires hang out? They want their kids to be entrepreneurs. So for me, it was more like a conscious, active strategy to reach out on you and say, hey, there's a guy who's all the way across the ocean. It might not lead to anything, but looking at all the statistics, all the billionaires, first of all, they all speak English or know a lot of English, or their kids speak English, and their kids are literally doing nothing. They are working in nonprofits, or they're spoiled rich kids or brats, but they're like, hey, I want to open up an ice cream shop. So you have to think about what the problem is that you're solving, and you have to ask yourself, where can you reach your customers? Where can you reach your investors? And that's the level of planning that I've come out with. Is I ask myself, where does everyone congregate? And I set my goal high, and I think about it all the time. And I'm not at a job. I'm at this, where I wake up at 6 a.m. in the morning, and I think about, what am I going to do? What's it going to take for me to be there? My kid's been in a documentary, but we want to do a 90-minute documentary on our family, because we thought that it was so fascinating of what I'm doing with my kids, juggling, fire. But you just have to set goals so high and have a runway. And the runway that I had was, I'm thankful for my mom, who let me live at home in her basement, like it was a converted basement. I didn't have to pay rent at that time for many years. So I could be ramen profitable, as the tech people would say. I made enough profit. I didn't have to ask my mom, and my mom didn't charge me a lot of rent. So that, to me, was the runway a company needs to take off. If you have a burn rate, you got to take in outside investors, and they're going to have equity in the company, and you have to be okay with giving away equity and making people money. If you're willing to help people make money, you can make money. You have to always be willing to make people money. And for me, it's weird because people ask me, other magicians, they hate me for this, but they ask, oh, how come you're charging this? I'm like, I just want to get my foot in the door. You got to get your foot in the door before you can charge the massive dollars. You have to make people money. This DJ, it's kind of funny. Many years ago, I had this DJ hire me $600 for a couple of hours worth of work. I found out that he was making $1,200 or $1,250. That's like 100% markup. And when other magicians hear that, they're like, you're being ripped off, Dan. I'm like, now whenever that one DJ has an event, he still calls me. I can send him anyone else. But if I'm not doing anything, I'm going to go out there. I'm going to go to an epic party. It's like a crazy party. Why wouldn't I go? And I'm not afraid to make my investors money. You know, I don't mind if I'm making $600, what else would I be doing with the skill set that I have? I wouldn't want to sell, real estate. I'm not the guy who wants to sell real estate. I don't want to do anything else but do magic. So for me to do a party, if you make 600, it doesn't matter how much you make. As long as I'm happy with what I'm happy with, eventually the next time you call, I can renegotiate. But most people aren't willing. They look, hey, it would have taken me an insane amount of time to get into that door. And if I kept on knocking on this door, this company gave away $100,000 giveaway at their company party. It's a real estate company. I'm not going to mention the name. But you see, I saw this sign that says $100,000 giveaway. They want me every single year because I delivered a result. But without me helping that agent make an insane amount of money, he would. And I told him that. I said, I don't care how. I actually, on the dashboard internally, I saw that he made the markup. And I was like, wow, that's a lot. I should be trying. Instead of framing it as I've been ripped off, I was like, this guy believes in me that much that he's willing to put his name on it because his name's on the contract. If I didn't do a good job, it would be his name or reputation. So I just reframed it as he's charging that much for me. I think I should start charging double when people are contacting me directly too. And
that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Don't be afraid to make people money. If you think that someone's making money, you can always charge more later, but get your foot in the door.
So really tons and tons of value bomb right there. I think, you're not just a magician. I think you're a marketer. You're a fantastic marketer, entrepreneur, and also, a fantastic communicator, right? I mean, I have just a few more questions for you before we end this episode. So one thing that I'd like you to share with our audience is, what are some takeaways? Like if you only had to give 3 advice to our listeners, what would you do? What would you give? What kind of advice?
Always deliver value first. Always look for the long-term goal. Never think of in terms of something in terms of a short-term goal, because when you plant a seed, you have to, first of all, not eat that piece of corn, and you got to put it in the ground. But it's going to grow. And when I'm building a venue or my investors are building a venue, you have to put money in first before people will come. And you have to put in the work first. But most people, the entrepreneur works first and gets the money later. The worker bees end up working for someone first and getting the money day to day. Entrepreneurship means that you invest so much and you believe in the idea so much that you're willing to put your money where your mouth is. Last thing is, how do you make yourself memorable? Practice your elevator pitch and practice telling people what you do and who you are, and be congruent. I'm a magician, mentor, and marketer. Those 3 are alliterations. Find ways to make yourself memorable, whether it's learning a magic trick. My magic's going to be out on a course. I don't do courses or things like that, but I'm going to be doing a short course for business people and even for kids. But have tie-ins, and be able to talk about what you love. I think I really didn't know that you're going to say 1, 2, and 3, because I'm so passionate and be so in the moment where it doesn't matter where you lead them, but your crowd enjoys the journey. I don't know what if I gave you 1, 2, or 3 takeaways, but I'm sure your
You gave me
viewers.
3. No worries.
Anyway,
Yeah, I got 3. So what's next for you in the next, say, 2 to 5 years? Do you have that planned out already? What kind of goals that you like to see come to fruition?
yeah, I want to teach what I know, so it's systematic, and I'm going to pass that on to people around the world. I'm going to give coaching sessions, because my idea is, traveling around the world is great. I'm going to do that a couple more years, but it's not that fun after you do it for a while. I've been to Germany, Japan 4 times, and I want to pass on that skill set. So when my students go out, they represent me. You look at Thomas Keller. He's built this ecosystem. When people leave, they say, that's a former Keller person, whether they're former French Laundry alumni. I want to make people so good that it reflects back on me. Having partnering with someone saying, hey, will you carry on my brand and my legacy? I'm going to pass on these effects that have made me a lot of money. And I'm going to pass that on, but I'm also going to have enough people who can hold down the fort for me, just in case I do travel for some larger events, so I can make myself replaceable. So at the dinner show, so it's not people just coming to see me. And my son's probably going to take that over with the dinner show, so we can interchange and people get the same quality product, whether it's me or my son doing this dinner show. And that's what my investors have said. They said, hey, Dan, we don't want to just invest in you. We want to invest in your team. And that's what I learned from Silicon Valley, from talking to people, getting out there. I asked them, if you were to throw something at it, what would you do? And that's where I want to go. I want to find investors. I want to open several magic venues, not just one. I want to open several. But we're going to start on a small spot first. The first one being little bit of an ice cream shop with a hidden theater behind it. Once we get that, we're going to create an ecosystem where everyone's learning how to do magic. Behind the guys scooping ice cream are going to be hired to do magic. But I'm going to train them. I'm going to find the right personality. It's going to be the guy behind there having the right personality, someone, who has that personality. Then we're going to make a magic club. And I have a product roadmap, and I'm just, the next thing is finding investors. And once the investors are there, I'm going to make them money, and we're going to have a very innovative concept. Hopefully something like Salt and Straw. Like Salt and Straw has lines. If you look at the lines at Salt and Straw, it's around the block. I would love to partner with a Thomas Keller or a Salt and Straw, or bring my concept to Asia, because I feel that my magic is so strong that no one in Asia is doing magic the way that I'm doing it. There's Lu Chin out there. People always ask me, do you know Lu Chin? I knew him. We were hanging out at the World Magic Seminars back in the day, and Magic Live. I'd see guys like him. I'd see him. I saw Shin Lim. In fact, I'm going to be my son's going to be performing with Shin Lim at a private event. The winner of America's Got Talent. One of my friends, he's a big magic fan, and he founded a big company, and he hired Xavier Mortimer, Shin Lim, and Mike from the Magic Castle, and some other guys. So I want to get these guys in on an event, and maybe even like for the grand opening, for a launch of a larger project. I always dream big. If it doesn't happen now, it happens later, but having a bigger dream motivates you to work a lot harder.
Yeah. Aim for the stars and you at least hit the moon, right?
Exactly.
So really awesome stuff, Dan. So thanks for sharing your story with us on this episode. And like, before we end this episode, like, is there anything that you'd like to add on, like, for anything else that you'd like to say to our audience?
Yeah, if you are ever in the San Francisco Bay Area, check out my website, bayareadinnershow.com. If you're throwing a private event, I'm at danchanmagic.com. And if you want to learn a little bit about magic, I'll be throwing up a Patreon page so that I can teach the effects that I myself created If you're an investor and you are looking to invest in something, people love ice cream, people love magic. It's a perfect combination. I am not afraid to help make you money and create something that's a viral sensation, because I think that as a magician and mentor, things should be passed on. And I look forward to seeing some of you live. When you come out to San Francisco, we've got something epic for you.
Fantastic. So where can these investors contact you?
Yeah, you can check out my website, see the videos, see the proof. The video is the video is the proof of what I've already done. So danchanmagic.com. I'm also on Instagram. Dan Chan Magic. Instagram only shows parts of it because I archive everything due to a special effect I'm using with Instagram. I can't show everything in my feed because I have to make things load up faster for a magic trick. So you can always see that. There's something weird about Instagram that everything doesn't stay on there. So my Facebook fan page, Dan Chan Billionaires Magician, has a lot of what I'm posting and where I've been.
Okay. Dan Chan's Billionaires Magician. Just want to make sure I got all of these for the show notes. Okay, cool. Once again, Dan, thanks for coming on to share your story with us. Really entertaining, extremely fun, and with a ton of valuable insights as well. So guys, if you enjoy listening to this episode, or you have a friend or a loved one, or if you know any investors that might be interested in investing in Dan's projects, please share it with them, okay? Yep. So
Hey,
yeah,
thank you, Jim.
that's it. No worries. Thank you so much.